All right, how we doing? Okay, so idea is just to do kind of a quick walkthrough in terms of a bit of color grading within Davinci and how to use the lot that I've made and a couple problems that you can come across for kind of general color grading. It's a very quick and easy process. I'm not going to labour on this too much, but just some basics that I do just to help set you up in the best way possible. So if we just dive into this. Okay, so we've got our clip here in Davinci within the color panel. So first off, I'm just going to build a bunch of nodes. So I'm going to throw 7 in there. That'll probably do us just now. Can add more if we need to. So before we do any color grading, what I like to do is just make sure that we have got our color management exactly how it should be. So we do Shift 9, open this up, go to our color management, and I've already got this set up for the project. So it's Davinci wide gamut and intermediate, and output color space is our Rec 709A. Difference between Rec 709 and Rec 709A, very basic. Rec 709 is like a television color standard. It's a standard color palette that we all go through. It's looking a bit dark. So it's like basic colors for broadcasting. The version Rec 709A basically came out a number of years ago when people were discovering that they were losing some contrast on specifically Apple products. So as most of us are editing on Macs and watching on iPhones, we were finding that when you were exporting anything in a normal Rec 709 color space, you would end up with this kind of washed out, slightly less saturation, slightly less contrast in your image. So a Rec 709A color space was kind of created to help combat that. So because I'm working on a Mac and because 95% of people in the world are watching on iPhones, I tend to export in 709A. What this doesn't do is this does not mean that when people are viewing on devices that aren't Apple, it's not too contrasty and it's not too saturated. It's not adding to it. It's just putting it into a color space that Apple recognizes a little better and handles better. So now that we've got these bits organized, hit save. And then we will go into our grading. So first off, obviously we have got our log image of Wilco and Univer here. What we're going to do is throw a transform on. Now obviously because we've made our timeline color space into Davinci White Gamut, we're obviously going to put our input here, which is our Sony sgamut3.cine, and same again, Sony slog3. And then we're going to go Davinci Wide Gamut and Davinci Intermediate. Also, this doesn't do anything because all we're saying is, okay, this is what it was shot at, and this is the color space we want to work in. Now, the timeline is already set to Davinci Wide Gamut, so nothing is going to happen. What we're going to do is throw a second CST color space transform on. We're then going to go out from Davinci Wide Gamut and Davinci Intermediate into our Rec 709. So in Rec 709 and Rec 709A. Now again, this is important. So if your color space is set up in Rec 709A, then make sure output gamma is Rec 709A rather than Rec 709. Fine. So that'll take us to our kind of basic Rec 709A looking image. Again, we turn that off and on. You see it's adding a bit of contrast, adding a bit of saturation to the image. You'll see this histogram waveform kind of punch out a wee bit as that is added. So yeah, cool. What I would do next is probably just throw the LUT on and see where we end up. So go down to our LUT, rally film LUT, throw that on to the last node. Again, what I have been seeing is typically workflows are working better with the LUT after the conversion. I'm going to show you the opposite just to see how much of a difference this makes. Throw that on there and you end up with this really weird green image. So I haven't quite sussed out why that's happening, but regardless, we take that off, put it on there, and it is looking better. So from there, I'll start to deal with exposure. And looking at that histogram, it's exposed pretty well, but I think we can add a bit of depth though. So we're gonna label this first node our exposure. I'm gonna just label them all now actually, just for ease of moving forward. We're gonna label this white balance, this one is going to be an S-curve. And then this one, I think we'll just add a bit of sharpness on, because again, this is a quick and easy breakdown. We're not going to go too heavily into specific coloring or whatever. We're not going to do any split toning. This is just a fast, easy grade if you need to pump this stuff out, which is kind of typically how I've been working recently. It's just, especially with the Dunhill stuff, it was get the shots, come back, put it together, grade it, punt it out. Not to say the grade is bad, it is just not a super in-depth grade. There's a time and a place for that, and that place and time is really when you have got weeks to work on a project. You know, if your deadline is 6 to 8 weeks away, and you can really spend time honing on the grading for every clip and every scene. Whereas this, it's for socials. You know, if someone spent 5 minutes or 3 days on the grade on socials, you're not going to notice it too much. So here, time is imperative. So let's, utilize the time we have rather than spending hours and hours in each clip. So we'll go back to our exposure. Again, looking at that histogram, I'm not too mad about where it is already. What I might do is go straight to the S-curve then and see what the histogram does. So typically we just throw a little S-curve on. So we're going to grab our points here, just lift it up by a stop, and do the same down here. Drop it by a stop. So again, we've added a shed load of contrast in there. We can see how much wider the histogram is looking, just so it doesn't bottom out as well and get that kind of slightly cinematic looking filmic situation. I'm going to bring this bottom stop up by a stop as well, and the top here I'm going to drop that as well, just so it flattens out our top end whites and our top end black, bottom end blacks just a wee touch. Again, just looking at the difference that's made. Much cleaner image, much more contrasty. We've got great separation between Wilco and the scene in front of him. So yeah, I'm liking where that is already, so I don't need to touch that. Okay, so going back to exposure then, we're just going to use our wheels for this. The S-curve I typically use for contrast. I won't throw a contrast in this primaries area. I'll just use the S-curve and then work from there. With exposure, again, I'm really not mad about where this is already. I tend to use that 896 level as an absolute ceiling for my highlights, so I might drop this a touch just to get that all within that sort of boundary. We saw a little bit coming back from the sky there. If we could have put it back to 1, you see all this is pretty same. If I drop that just a couple of marks, you see we get a little bit more from it. In doing that, general rule of thumb is if you're dropping your gain, you want to lift your gamma. So our midpoints are sitting pretty low because this jumper is quite contrasty, so I'm going to pump that up just a touch. Yeah, literally just literally, 0.1 of a notch. Again, looking at the difference that's made, not massive, but you're just getting a little bit more detail into this jumper, and it's again, ever so slightly less in the highlights. I'm going to leave the lift because looking at that histogram is exactly where I want it to be, and to the eye, it's absolutely fine. So from a white balance perspective, the easiest way to do white balance is firstly ignore these temp and tint parts in your primaries. What you want to do is right click on your node, you're going to go down to gamma and then hit linear. This basically means that your primaries are going to work in an RGB color space, and your gain wheel is going to completely control your white balance. It's a more accurate way to do it than your temp and tint sliders, as it were. Easiest way to control that is we're going to go to our waveform option here. We're going to click the vector scope. Now, considering we are not dealing with a massively colorful image in terms of what we have here, we're not getting much here. The general rule of thumb with this tool is to use that vector scope, and then the biggest white blob in the vector scope, we're going to try and get our image into the middle of that white blob, because then it means that we've hit our white point. We're not seeing much here, so I'm going to play around with this and see what happens if my laptop didn't freeze. I'm going to reset that. So I'm going to play around with this and see what we get. Now, honestly, I don't think we need to do too much with this. I kind of like where that is there. It's really the tiniest difference. I think we're cooling the image by, see, looking at the numbers here, we're just adding a couple of bits onto the blue end and taking a couple away from the red side. So that is just a slight temperature shift. From what I can see, we're getting a little bit back in the sky. There's bits of blue coming in here very lightly. We just disable that and enable that as we go. Yeah, we're seeing just a little better. So yeah, I'm happy with where that is. Sharpness, simple. Go down to your sharpness and blur option. Make sure you hit sharpness, and then I'm just going to drop the radius by 3 points, probably about right. Yeah, just giving us a little. I don't tend to touch scaling things too much, just because they get a little bit messy and it ends up looking really artificial. So I'm pretty happy to leave that where that is. So that would be a super simple grade. There's nothing else I would really need to do to that if I'm just putting this out for social media. Quite happy with where that is. And yeah, I don't really think I need to add anything to it. The only thing, if I really felt like I was lacking a punch of colour, would be I would throw in a wee saturation curve. So typically this is the workflow I work in just because I know where everything is. What I'd be doing is adding a node in here, right clicking, going into color space and changing that to HSV, which is obviously, oh no, I've forgotten what that is. Anyway, the S is saturation. I can't remember what the V and the H are, but anyway, hue, I think. Anyway, S is saturation, so we're gonna go at HSV, and that means that when we are in our curves here, our green channel is gonna be focused purely on saturation. Some people like to go down here and disable channels and just make a channel 2. There's no need. You literally just change to HSV, unlink everything, hit green, and then grab somewhere on the top right here, and you are going to start pumping saturation into your image. As you can see, it's pretty wild how much control you end up with there. So putting that back to neutral, I'm going to just have a look, grab something like that there, maybe more, yeah, put some saturation. So again, this these curves are working within the color spaces of the image. So this top end is your whites, this second from the right is your highlights, you've got midtones, your shadows, and your darks. So that's kind of how everything is split up. So if I'm wanting to pump some color into his jersey, say, that's going to be right in my midtone area. So I'm going to pump that up there, and we can see that we're gaining a bit of saturation there. What we are also gaining is some horrible color in his neck. So maybe need to put that a little bit higher to miss that out. What we can also do is just drop a touch on the bottom end, just to level the whole thing back out. Again, minor changes. I'm gonna have a wee look see and just see how much we are actually gaining from that. You know what? We're actually gaining fucking nothing from that, so I'm just gonna leave it. Don't need it. The image is looking great, so I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, that's a quick rundown. If we are literally just to Command C and copy that grade from this clip, go to this next clip, Control V, smash it on. See, like that is looking pretty solid. Again, the white balance is pretty bang on. It's dropping the temperature just a wee touch and bringing it back to a nice place of neutrality. The S curve is adding the contrast we need. The exposure again is just lifting that grass and just not making it quite as contrasty. And again, with and without the lot, we're getting those nice kind of filmic looking colors. So yeah, pretty happy with that. That is my workflow for my kind of quicker socials stuff. We can touch on, what can we do? We can do a couple more things here. So I'm going to open this up. This is just another clip from the same piece with Wilco. Everything here that we have done previously, I'm going to just control paste. So that is exactly what we've been dealing with. The only thing that I think I'd be adding here that is not already here is possibly, if we wanted to get into it a little bit, and maybe drop in my shadows and HDRs. So HDR is just dealing with an HDR color space. So you're just splitting up your light zones that bit more. So again, if you go through that, you end up with black, dark, shadow, light, highlight, and specular. So again, these are all just different cutoff points within the light spectrum, going from very, very dark to, well, black to white, being specular right at the top. What I sometimes like to do is just drop these shadows and dark pieces just by a touch. Literally, we're talking -0.15. we're going to see a slight change in our kind of darker ends of the image here. So again, if I was to just take those out, you're going to notice a very little minimal touch there. See? Yeah, minimal, but just adds a little bit more contrast, a bit more punch to the image, which is super nice. I really like it. So yeah, that's it. Very basic. And yeah, any more questions? Shout. Peace.